Hi there. Today we'll be continuing our fallacies of relevance lesson. And remember, in our previous lesson, we actually spoke about the 7 different types of fallacies. I covered the fallacy of personal attack, attacking the motive, look who's talking, 2 wrongs make a right, scare tactics, appeal to pity, and lastly, the bandwagon argument. Now, for today's lesson, we will look at the remaining 4 fallacies of relevance. These are the straw man fallacy, red herring fallacy, equivocation fallacy, and the last one, begging the question fallacy. Now let's proceed with the next one. So the 8th fallacy that we'll be looking at would be the straw man fallacy. I'm very sure that you know what a straw man means. If not, you could actually Google it up. A straw man is basically a scarecrow that's being put in the middle of a field or plantation to scare the crows or other types of birds. But in this case, this fallacy is given this name because it's quite apt though, because when it's committed, the arguer actually distorts. The meaning of distort here is very complex. Distort here basically means tries to change, make it into a different shape, misshape, try to mislead an opponent's argument to make it weak. So just like a straw man, not strong, not a real man, and thus it becomes easier to attack. So what do? They do actually look at the argument. So when you want to argue with your opponent, you actually look at the argument. So this is one of the fallacies that actually looks at their argument. But the problem is you try to misconstruct the argument to make it weak and then attack it. So you don't deal with the person, you don't deal with the motive, you attack directly on the argument. But what do is you try to play dirty. You don't really argue properly by giving proper reasoning. You just try to make the argument sound weak. And then you come up with your own argument. And when you come up with your own argument, the other person's argument looks weak. So a strongman argument can be annoyingly effective. That's the most difficult one. So when someone commits a strongman fallacy, it's going to be very difficult for you to respond, to make you sound true, believable, or claimable, because in response, you have to always spend time to clarify what your position is not, instead of what your position is. So when they make or distort your argument, you will try to make the distortion come back to the normal argument. You try to represent the misrepresentation, if I want to put it. So the common pattern is the fallacy, the person who comes up with the fallacy will actually try to misrepresent whatever that you claim. So when he or she misrepresents your claim becomes false. Therefore, your claim will be rejected. It's quite difficult to understand this concept, but I think when we take a look at the examples, you can understand it more. So let's take a look at this example. It's a comic, quite interesting. I can go through it. I'll give you about 30 seconds or so. So if you take a look at this comic, you could see that the boss is trying to commit the strawman fallacy. What is the strawman fallacy again? Misrepresenting someone's argument to make it easier to refute. So you have a worker, a staff perhaps, with the boss. Yeah. So here he says, and given my contributions to this paper, I think that I deserve to share credit with the first author. So what is this person trying to say? He's saying that since I have contributed, since I have worked hard for this paper, maybe perhaps a research paper, I think that I deserve to have some credits with the first author. So there is another author, so can you also include my name? Can you also give me credits for my work? Well, it's a fair request, but let's see what does the boss says. So boss, yeah, so fame is more important to you than science, huh? That's sad. Well, the boss straight away equates sharing credits with the first author as seeking fame, seeking popularity. And he tries to say that the worker, the staff, is actually going crazy about fame, wanting to be popular rather than wanting to contribute to science itself. And then the worker tries to justify himself. Let's take a look at the second picture. What? I didn't say that. So he's just trying to say, trying to represent what he didn't represent earlier, trying to clear the distortion that's being done. What? I didn't say that. So what would the boss say now? The boss is even smarter. He uses straw man for the second time by saying that, oh, so now I'm senile too. You're trying to say that I'm crazy, I'm off my mind. You're trying to say that I created or fabricated facts. So can you see how it's done? Now let's take a look at this. I'll give you 1 minute. Let's take a look at this situation where we have the son and the mother. So son says, can we get a dog, perhaps as a pet? And the mom was very strict. She just says no. So the son tries to actually give a reasoning. That's good. Son, it would protect us. But mom is not convinced. She goes by saying still no. So what does the son do now? He knows that reasoning enough is not good enough. He maybe innocently uses straw man fallacy. Why do you want to leave us and our house unprotected? When he says that, he is trying to say that perhaps the mom is not giving their safety a priority. But do you think that's the case? The mom is perhaps not ready to have a pet because it requires a lot of attention and a lot of work. So she definitely refuses for that reason. Or maybe she is not fond of dogs. But in this case, the son makes the straw man argument by saying that the mother's reason for not getting a dog has got nothing to do with that. So he's trying to say that the mom is not concerned about protections, So that's how bad straw man fallacy can be. Now let's take a look at the next type of fallacy. This fallacy is called red herring. Well, red herring is actually a type of dried fish. But why would they want to use this for fallacies? Have you ever thought about it? So red herring is a kind of fallacy that is an irrelevant topic being introduced in an argument. So this is where when you make an argument, you just include something irrelevant. Why? In order to divert the attention of listeners or readers from the original issue. It sounds a little bit foolish, but it's actually a very smart move in presenting your argument. So the main point here, or the main focus here, is that red herring fallacies actually try to divert the attention of the readers or the listeners from the original issue. So you need to understand a little bit more about the term red herring in order to get the relationship between the term, the fish, to critical thinking and how it's being used in the fallacies. So the term red herring means a kind of dried red fish, and this fish actually has a very distinct, pungent, very strong smell. So if you take a look at the use of red herring in fox hunting, hounds are actually prevented from catching the fox by distracting them with the strong scent of red herring. So hounds cannot really see or smell the fox because they are being clouded with the strong scent of the red herring. That's the distractor. The real or the original issue is actually the fox. So hounds cannot see the fox, cannot sense the fox because they are being clouded with the scent of the red herring. So similarly, a person can be stopped from proving his point in an argument by distracting him with an irrelevant issue. Now let's take a look at the examples given. Number one, many people criticize Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is a famous golfer, American golfer, for being disloyal to his wife, but he was the greatest golfer in the world. Such criticisms must be without basis. So this is based on a scandal that Tiger Woods had, and it became very public, and a lot of people had lots of opinion on this issue. But red herring fallacy is actually being used here, if you notice. So the issue, the major claim is Tiger Woods being disloyal to his wife. But the reasoning is actually an irrelevant factor, irrelevant point. The greatest golfer in the world. Therefore, the conclusion made, criticisms must be without basis. So this person who makes the claim actually says that this criticism is not true. But how does being a great golfer actually proves or guarantees that the golfer will not be disloyal to his wife? So those are two different aspects. Now let's take a look at the second example. I don't understand why you get upset about me drinking and driving. So it's trying to say that you don't have to worry about me drinking and driving. It's not really that bad. Look at those accidents caused by people who talk on the handphone. So this person tries to maybe calm down a friend, a partner, mother, whoever it is, by saying that other people die too using handphones. So why can't I drink and drive? So if you take a look at this, these two things are not related or not relevant. The second reasoning, people who use handphones cause road accidents, are not relevant to the fact that this person drinks and drives. Now let's take a look at the third example. Mike and Ken, Mike. It is morally wrong to cheat on your spouse. So that's a good statement. Why on earth would you have done that? So Ken, instead of giving a reason for cheating on his spouse, distracts Mike by saying or by asking the definition of what is morality exactly. So now Mike got distracted and tries to explain on morality. It's a code of conduct shared by cultures. And then Ken goes on distracting Mike by asking irrelevant questions. But who creates this code? So if you notice, Mike did not get the answer for Ken's cheating on his spouse. So the issue was never discussed nor reasoned. For equivocation, this fallacy happens when arguments actually commit the fallacy of equivocation by switching the meaning of one or more of its ambiguous terms. So here it's basically having two words with a similar sound or pronunciation and then code switching or switching the meaning of word one to the other word. So what happens is it makes the person gets confused, and it all depends on the shifting of the meaning. So if the argument is successful, then you have shifted the meaning well. So equivocation fallacy is usually one as such type of flawed logic. It doesn't really involve logic that is sometimes intentionally used for humor purpose. Let's take a look at the examples here. See, when you have context one, yeah, it says that the sign says, fine for parking here. So fine here basically means that it's a penalty, the word fine, yeah. Penalty, you will be given a summon. Compared to the next context, the sign says parking is fine. So parking here basically means that you can park here. It is okay to park here. So the second word fine here means it's okay, it's good. So you can't make the conclusion, so I'm parking my car here. That wouldn't work. Now let's take a look at the next one. A feather is light. So this light is basically focusing on the weight of the feather. It has very little weight. It is bearable. But what is light cannot be dark. So the second sentence is on a different context. So when you say what is light, you're talking about the rays, the light itself, like sunlight. Therefore, a feather cannot be dark. So the conclusion is totally off because the first light and the second light has got different meanings. So the arguer basically has switched the meanings. So that's equivocation. Let's try the next one. Margarine is better than nothing. So having margarine is better than nothing. You can say it when you want to have a spread for your bread, for example. So margarine is better than nothing. Nothing here means zero, empty. And nothing is better than butter. So this nothing is like, nothing on earth is better than butter. But you can't make this conclusion. Therefore, margarine is better than butter. No, no, no. That's not what it means. And let's take a look at this picture. All trees have barks. So barks here refers to the tree trunk, yeah? And every tree barks. So that's the sound that dogs make. Therefore, every dog is a tree. That's a very false example of an argument. Therefore, equivocation is actually made. Now, let's take a look at the last fallacy. This fallacy, begging the question, is actually quite interesting. Let's take a look at it. So this fallacy in which the premises include the claim that the conclusion is true. You get it? So when you make this fallacy, you make someone believe or assume that your conclusion is actually a premise. So there is no clear-cut difference between the premise and the conclusion. So the conclusion is basically restating the premise. That's the key for identifying this kind of fallacy. Begging the question is basically committed when you restate your premise. So your premise and your conclusion are the same. It's just being reworded or rephrased. Let's take a look at this. The soul is immortal, so which means the soul can't die, since it lives forever. So the reasoning here is not really a reasoning because you're just repeating your claim. Lives forever means the same as immortal. And the second reasoning is also not new because you just repeated the word immortal by saying that since it does not die means the same as immortal. Thus, it is immortal. So even though it sounds like a correct or a true argument, but it lacks reasoning. You just used the claim and restated it as your premises and your conclusion. So you did not give any concrete reasoning in proving your case. Well, there are two common ways to commit this fallacy. The first one is basically restating the conclusion in a slightly different way, but people can't really get it at the first time. For example, bungee jumping is dangerous. That's a good claim. Because, now let's take a look at the reason. It is unsafe. So at one go, this looks like a good argument. But if you take a closer look at it, the reasoning does not really exist because it just repeated the conclusion or the claim. Why? Because the word dangerous means the same as unsafe. So there is no real reason being given to that. Now let's take a look at the second one. Capital punishment is wrong because it is ethically impermissible to inflict death as punishment for a crime. So if you take a look at this, it sounds fancy, but the word capital punishment technically means ethically inflicting death. So you're just repeating your claim or your conclusion. And let's take a look at the second one. The second way would be when the arguer offers a chain of reasons. So there are many reasons, but the reasons are actually in disguise. They are actually conclusions being stated or assumed as the premises. For example, God must exist. And when the other person asks, how do you know? Because the Bible says so. Okay, why should I believe the Bible? Because the Bible was written by God. So then again, you could see that it goes in a cyclic motion. It goes back to God now. There's no clear-cut evidence on the existence of God, and Bill has not proven it. So I hope that you have come to an understanding of what fallacies are, and you can identify the 11 different types of fallacies for our course. So let's just do some warm-up exercise for these fallacies. So you have to identify the types of fallacies in the text or situations given below. You can choose your answers from personal attack, two wrongs make a right, bandwagon, straw man, red herring, or begging the questions. Let's take a look at the first one. The Toyota Vios is the coolest car around here. You should ask your parents to get you one. Manage to get the answer? It's not that difficult if you take a look at the clue. I'll give you a few seconds. Well, maybe some of you got it right. The clue here is the word coolest car around here. So this person argues by saying that Toyota car is the coolest car here. What's the meaning of that? It's in trend. Everybody uses it. Remember when I lectured on this, I told you that whenever you have everyone uses or does something, you're actually trying to follow a group of people. Therefore, it becomes bandwagon. So the answer for this is bandwagon argument. Let's take a look at the second one. Do not hold a candle next to that paper. Paper is capable of burning because it burns. Any idea? Well, it might look a little bit confusing, but it's quite clear. Do not hold a candle next to that paper. That's a good claim. Don't do it. But why? Paper is capable of burning, correct? Because it burns. So capable of burning and it burns is actually repetitive. So the claim of it's capable of burning is being reasoned by the same claim. There is no clear-cut reasoning. There is no premise in this case. So when we do not have a premise, the premise is actually a repetition of the claim or the conclusion, then it becomes begging the question. So the answer for number 2 is begging the question. Now let's take a look at number 3. Chong, hey, my Maybank made a mistake in my account. I have an extra 500 ringgit. Siti, really? Are you going to report it to the bank? Chong, why should I? The bank has been making a lot of money at our expense. This is quite easy, right? So if you still can't get it, try to look at it. So bank actually made a mistake and gave him an extra 500. Technically, he should report it to the bank and give back the 500 ringgit. But he did not do that. He does not want to do that. So that's one wrong. And he reasons it by giving another wrong. The bank makes a lot of money at our expense. So 2 wrongs make a right. That's what he says. 2 wrongs make a right is the answer for number 3. Now let's take a look at number 4. Joseph works for Syarikat ABC Sdn Bhd. He feels that changing the designation, the title of secretary to office assistant will help gain more respect for the person. So he felt that it's like an upgrade of the position title. But deep down inside, we know that Syarikat ABC does not really care about what you want, just as long the company do not have to raise your salary. So what has this company done? The company actually tries not to raise your sale, but they give you the impression that there is an upgrade that's being done. How do they do that? They change the title, they make it sound polished, but deep down inside they didn't increase anything. So they're just trying to divert you. They just try to divert you from the original issue. So whenever you have this or diverting from the original issue, then you should know that this fallacy is actually, yes, you're right, red herring fallacy. Now let's take a look at the next situation. Flag burning is illegal. Just ask everyone you know and they will agree. So that is a claim, and then they say that just ask everyone and they will agree. So what kind of fallacy do you think this is? Okay, well done. You know that whenever you have everyone, so when you use the general or the masses to claim, to support your claim, then it is the bandwagon argument. Now let's take a look at number 6. Of course, you should have your nose pierced. Body modification is the happening thing nowadays. It's the it thing nowadays. Oh, what do you go by? Yes. So that's bandwagon again. Well done. Now let's take a look at this question. Yes, our science teacher, Mr. Wong, said that man did not come from the apes. So Mr. Wong comes up with a claim saying that man did not come from the apes. That's a good claim. So how should you reason it? Let's have a look at this. But look at Mr. Wong. He is the rudest teacher I have met. Man did not come from apes. So this is quite clear that the arguer tries to attack Mr. Wong's personality and then base it on the claim that Mr. Wong makes. So you are right, this is personal attack. Now let's take a look at the last example. Critics have accused my administration of doing too little to save the family farm. These critics forgot that I grew up on a farm. I know what it's like to work milking the cows in the morning, so those who criticize my farm policies simply do not know what they're talking about. So this is quite difficult, right? Want to give a try? So let's just try to see what's the main claim here. The main claim of this person could probably be a politician because he talks about policies and talks about administration. So, or maybe a local authority. Yeah? So he tries to refute the critics' accusations by saying that he did a lot for the farm. But did he actually mention anything about it? He includes the fact that he grew up on a farm, he knows how to milk cows, and therefore his policies are just too good. So that's definitely a fallacy. But what kind of fallacy would that be? Okay, so if you notice for this, he is not giving any reasons as to why his policies are good or his administration has done a lot in order to save the farm. He simply brings irrelevant information or statements into his argument. So when he brings irrelevant information in order to divert our attention, he is basically trying to use the red herring fallacy. Alright, so for now, we're done with all the fallacies of relevance, and I hope that you have enjoyed the lesson. Thank you.